taxation of earnouts in an M&A is complex, not just from a seller perspective who earns income and is therefore required to pay taxes on it, but also from a buyer perspective who makes payments. Now, from a seller perspective, there are mainly two tax issues. One is the nature of earnouts from a tax perspective. Is it additional capital gain income that the seller earns, or is it just employment linked incentive, performance linked incentive that the seller earns? And of course, taxability could change substantially depending on how earnouts are viewed from a tax perspective. And the second tax issue for the seller is, when is it taxable? Is it taxable upfront when the shares are sold by the seller, or is it taxable when the deferred payment based on earnouts is actually received by the seller? And on this particular issue, there have been contradictory rulings. As per one ruling, the payments are taxable upfront, and as per another ruling, the payments should be taxable in the year in which seller is actually receiving them, because court appreciated the fact that these payments could be conditional, and until those conditions are satisfied, seller cannot be considered as having earned that income. From a buyer perspective, again, there are two main issues. One is, how should buyer be treating these payments in its hands? Is it additional cost basis that the buyer gets in shares, or is it just a sunk cost for the buyer? And second issue is from a withholding tax perspective. If the share sale transaction is subject to withholding taxes, is the buyer required to withhold tax on the total consideration, upfront plus deferred, or just the upfront consideration? When we talk about applicable tax provisions, there is no specific tax provision dealing with these tax issues, and therefore there are these gray areas both for the seller as well as the buyer. And for buyer tax issues, there's no judicial precedent as on date which clarifies some of those aspects. Given these tax issues and concerns, it makes sense to look at structures which could help mitigate these issues to some extent, which could essentially help delink earnout based payments from the upfront share sale. And some of the examples of such structures could be, let's say, where instead of selling all the shares upfront, seller sells the shares in tranches, and whatever is paid for a particular tranche is then taxable at the time when the tranche is sold, and not at the time of first upfront sale itself. From a buyer perspective as well, this structure should work better because it will have clarity for the buyer with respect to buyer's cost basis in shares. Whatever buyer pays for a particular tranche should be available to the buyer as cost basis in shares. The other structure could be where, let's say, a seller sells all the shares upfront but subscribes to a new instrument, let's say a redeemable preference share instrument in the company at nominal consideration, and then the deferred component is structured as part of the redemption premium on redemption of preference shares. So this also helps delink the earnout based payments from the upfront share sale. Another structure could be, let's say, where the earnout based payments are clearly identified and recorded as employment linked incentive payable to the seller, when parties report this income as salary income linked to the employment exercised by the seller. Now, when these payments are offered to tax as salary income, of course the tax rate will be higher because employment income is taxable as ordinary income at higher rates compared to capital gains income. But still, this structure will have that clarity that seller won't have to go out of pocket and pay taxes without having earned that income. He'll be paying taxes only when there's clarity that seller is going to earn that income. Now, when we talk about structures of this nature, of course there could be other nuances each structure may have, even in terms of other tax issues. For example, taxation of redemption premium on preference shares is an issue in itself, and that needs a closer look and evaluation. Employment structure, whether it makes sense to structure it as consultancy instead of an employment model, is also something that could be looked at in detail. So while there could be these nuances and even the legal aspects would need attention, broadly, structures like these could help mitigate the tax issue for the seller, where seller won't have to go out of pocket at the time of share sale upfront, where the subsequent payments may be uncertain, but he'll be paying taxes upfront without having the ability to recover those taxes later on. There are three important related structuring elements for an exercise of this nature. One is substance, Given that tax laws have anti-abuse regime now, it's important that whatever structure is finalized is able to pass muster under the general anti-abuse rules. The second will be documentation, again a very important element of the whole structuring exercise. Whatever structure is finalized needs to be adequately, properly documented in the transaction documents, because documents will be key in any defense proceedings before the tax authorities. And third will be valuations. Share deals are required to satisfy certain tax specific valuation requirements, and therefore those would also require attention. In closing, I would like to caution that there is no one size fits all when it comes to structuring an M&A earnout. What may work in one deal may not be appropriate in another, and therefore the optimum tax earnout structure needs to be bespoke for the transaction. Every deal may have different commercial drivers, different requirements, different circumstances, and even the legal and other tax considerations may vary depending on those circumstances.